doing, folks? In this episode today, I'm joined by former Olympic coaches Bryan, Zemba, and Rob Kober. I'm also joined by former Olympian Troy Murphy and former USSA Coach of the Year, Lars Johnson. And in this episode, we go through and break down the World Cup season so far. We talk about the first couple events for FIS freestyle mogul skiing, and we give a big Olympic preview for the Olympic Winter Games coming up here in Beijing. We discuss our picks and break down who we think is going to take home gold, silver, and bronze at the upcoming Winter Olympic Games. We have a lot of fun, break down a lot of the action so far and who we're liking and what we think is going to happen coming up. I hope you folks enjoy. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks. We're rolling. Boys, thanks for taking the time. This is going to be a lot of fun, getting everyone in here, getting to chat about the World Cup so far and kind of a little bit of an Olympic preview as well. It's a lot of fun. Mr. Murphy and Zemba, we missed you guys for the opening preview, but nice to have you in, and also nice to have Mr. Kober for taking the time. Appreciate that to talk about the season a little bit. You've been at a lot of the events, so you can give us a lot of insight as well. And Lars, thank you for coming back and deciding to do this again. This should be fun.
I'm just going to go ahead and say I'm going to defer all my tough decisions to Rob since he's been at everything.
Thanks, Troy. Well, I'm psyched. I'm psyched to join you guys here tonight. That's I've really enjoyed the previews the previews and recaps and the fine work that you guys have done. I had a lot of time to listen to a lot of podcasts when I was in China for several months there. So definitely psyched to be a part of it this time.
Yeah, psyched to have you.
Yeah.
So I guess starting things off, what we can go one at a time. Whoever wants to start, just opening thoughts on kind of how the season has kind of progressed. And I know at least for the winners of the first couple, I think we did first singles event and first duels event to start the year off. I am clearly a genius because I went out on a limb. I picked Mick to win. I don't think anybody saw that coming. And, I felt really good about that. So, yeah, I'm feeling good about the pick so far. On the women's side, it's been a little bit more, definitely a little bit more wide open for sure. And that's been super interesting and kind of exciting to see how that's progressed, seeing Perrine kind of be challenged a little bit. I think from going back and one of the things I noticed, at least in Ruka, she seemed a little bit shell-shocked, at least because I did the commentary for it as well for Ski and Snowboard.live. And that was definitely like, she was a little bit surprised. I think she was kind of expecting to come in her typical normal, maybe 80% run, maybe not her full throttle, which has, made her the 4-time defending world champion kind of. I think she was expecting that. And I think she was pretty surprised to not be on the podium or not be in the winner spot. So I think that's definitely been a little bit of a difference that I've noticed this year. And it's been fun to watch Akuma and Mick kind of go back and forth there, but would love to have your thoughts. Well, Lars, you're right next to me on the screen here, at least as I look at it. So we'll start with Lars. We'll go with Mr. Murphy, Zemba, and then we'll finish with Mr. Kober there. You guys have the floor.
Bob, first of all, thanks for having me again. Gentlemen, great to see you all. I completely forgot that we were actually going to do a recap of our first picks, and I am having the hardest time actually remembering who I actually picked. All I know is I didn't pick Mick. And nobody picked OG, but great to see Olivia kind of take out that first win and kind of solidify an Olympic spot with that. That's been really exciting to watch. Kind of speaking to her a little bit, but it's been that is the biggest curveball I think that we've seen so far. Not necessarily Perrine kind of being a little shell-shocked and seeing all these other girls kind of coming out firing. I think really just seeing Olivia and seeing the package that she's put together and kind of picking up her speed and her turns and lines and jumping the way that she knows how, that's been the most exciting thing for me to watch. And I think I'm very excited for her to go into the Olympics, and I feel very confident with her going in. So first World Cup Ruka, biggest thing was obviously Olivia for me. Do you want me to go into What was the second World Cup?
The
Idre?
second one, we went to
You want me
Idre,
to
and
go
then
to-
they finished in France. Yeah, you can do all. Yeah, or you can go up to DV, whatever you feel like talking about. The
Hey,
floor is yours,
I'm
my
gonna
man.
go to DV. I can't even remember Idre and France from there. DV, I was unfortunately unable to make it, which was a bummer. Would have been good to see all you guys there. But who won first day for men? Mick?
First day was Mick, yeah, and then Akuma
Correct.
won the second
day. Akuma. I actually thought if we actually put our list down, I would have picked Akuma both days. For some reason, I'm on this tangent of picking Mick of not winning, taking those dark horses underneath. But again, it looked hard. Deer Valley, it looked firm, difficult course. I think events there during the day are always difficult to, actually ski with the lighting, and, guys, they're so much more used to, skiing there at night, and that's the big show, right? So, all of a sudden actually coming down and skiing, during the day is totally different. Not having the crowd, the light, the shadow, the lights behind you, I think makes things pretty difficult.
But no, Deer Valley was definitely challenging. It's interesting to see, at least on the American side, George, who was a little bit of a dark horse, come in. He skied really well. And then obviously the super finals, I think that view is, he's got like 4 million views on TikTok, or it's NBC's TikTok or whatever, of him hitting his head, which I'm sure he just loves watching that over and over again. But the funny part about that, I remember when we were in Idre, and I think he was talking with Avital about it, the fact that he had gotten like this he was really pumped on the new helmet that he had gotten, and how like safe it was,
sweet
the whole
protection, right?
Sweet protection. And I had never heard of it. And I remember as a competitor, I never thought once about the safety of my helmet. I was like, yeah, it's Protect, got a crack in it. I think I duct tape it. Like, it's fine. Like, it was definitely, when I started competing, you didn't even need to wear a helmet. So it was definitely one of those things where it was not, I was like, oh yeah, it's great, dude. Sounds like a great helmet. But that did cross my mind. I was like, oh, he was hyping that helmet up, and clearly worked out. Troy, what are your thoughts? I mean, we missed you at the first one, and as you've had a chance to kind of watch the season start to go here, and obviously you have your teammates and stuff like that, your former teammates go through and get a chance. What's been the overall impression, I guess, of the season so far?
Yeah, I think a few things. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to watch as much as I would have liked, just with work and everything, but I try to watch the replays, or at least little things I see on social media. But a few key takeaways, I think it's been really cool to see the Japanese, like the depth of the Japanese team is really impressive to me. I think they've like really showed up, and especially like at Deer Valley, they were really strong. They had what, 2 men on the podium one day and 2 women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very impressive. And I just like everything they're doing. I think they ski really well, and fun to watch. So that's been really cool to see. The U.S. team has been really exciting to watch. We've got a lot of really strong athletes, especially on the women's side, which obviously it's come down to the wire on that team. Everybody is just skiing so strong and so much depth there, so that always makes it exciting. Olivia's 10 to me was super impressive. Like, the first time I saw that, I was like, damn, that is legit. It was like, yeah, pretty, like very impressive 1080 first try in competition. Like, that was really, really cool to watch. Cole McDonald's been really cool to watch. I feel like every Olympic cycle, there's some dark horse US guy that comes out of nowhere and makes the team. And so he's been that guy for sure this year. And Bob, I know you've worked with him a little bit in Idra and stuff. So it's been kind of fun to keep up on that story. And yeah, I feel like those are the main takeaways for me. Like, that's the stuff that I've been watching the most and really keeping tabs on, is obviously like most connected to the US team, but the Japanese skiers, are impressive. And then obviously, Mick and Perrine and all those people are continuing to do their thing, maybe a little bit rattled, as you said, Bob, but still, still performing at a very high level. I'm also curious to see what happens with Matt Graham, if he can come back and ski through that injury. That'll be really exciting to watch. Hoping the best for him.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's been for that aspect. Matt's one of those ones that I definitely, he's the defending world champion, and he had a really pretty gnarly crash there in Idre, and sounds like the collarbone, everything's kind of healing up. I know they're training Ruka right now as they kind of get through their Olympic don't get COVID camp, as it seems like everybody is trying to get through right now. Mr. Zemba, your thoughts so far?
Yeah, to piggyback a little bit off what Murphy was saying, the depth of the Japanese team has been not surprising, but it's been super consistent. And I think maybe we overlooked that a little bit. I know it wasn't in the preseason, the lead up to the season podcast, but I think maybe we might overlook that a little bit. The depth of the girls team and the boys team. I mean, it seems like every time there's a big competition, whether it be the Olympics or a world championship, Daichi's name just starts becoming more and more relevant, and he's peaking per usual at the right time. And then on the girls side, no surprise that the girls US team continues to show up. And I mean, you could just pick any name out of the hat who's going to show up on that day. They're super consistent and super deep. The boys on the men's side keep chipping away, but they're getting close to being on the top of the box there. Just having a history with Wasatch Freestyle, it is very cool to see Nick and Cole's name kind of towards the top of the result sheet, and to see 3 of the 4 U.S. boys going to the Olympics being from Wasatch. So that's super cool. But yeah, looking forward to see what all unravels at the Big O show. It's a different ball game for sure. And I think they have a good mix, just getting back to the U.S. side of veteran presence, but also, I guess, I don't want to call it rookie ignorance, but just rookies there to lay it down, and we'll see what happens. But and then in terms of the rest of the world, you have Jakara's name consistently back in the mix. Another one that always rises to the occasion. It should be interesting seeing what Justine does at the Olympics, and Brittany's name starting to creep back up there. Should be a fun show. And then obviously you have the depth of the men's Swedish team as always, with Walter and Ludwig. Ludwig always shows up at Deer Valley. We'll see if he can carry that into the O show. They're a good team there, but I think there's a little bit more variety than maybe in years past. You have Mick, but even Mick every now and then hasn't been winning everything. So we'll see. It's leading up to be a very interesting Olympics.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Rob, your thoughts so far? I mean, you've been able to be at pretty much every event leading in. So yeah, what aspects on your side?
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice to be back after being away for a couple of years. It's for sure. It's nice to be standing at the top with your guy in the super final instead of watching from the bottom. So that was a little bit different for me, but yeah, really fun to be back and be able to watch those events firsthand. And for sure, like obviously I'm going to be hugely biased, but my money's on Mick going into the games here. I thought for sure, like Akuma is challenging him more and more, and there's other guys that can kind of rise to the occasion on any given day. No question about it. But I keep my money on Mick still. But those Japanese guys, that Japanese team, it's crazy how good they are. And on the tour, I think they've underperformed so far, given their talent. And like Bobby, you were there in IDRA, you saw those guys. Like there is a ton of kids. It's like a Japanese army of mogul skiers, even below their World Cup team. They were super impressive, super annoying at the same time, taking up all the space and hiking that bottom air, always being in the way. Like for sure, they work hard, they do their part, but there's like 40 kids outside of the World Cup team that were training in IDRA. And it's no secret why they're so good. Like those guys went over to Europe early in the fall and they didn't take any time off. They trained right through. And even over the Christmas break, they went to Whistler. I think they were scared to go home because they might not get out again. So they just kept on skiing, kept on training right through. And it's no secret how you get good. Those guys have largely outworked the rest of the world, in my opinion, over the last 4 years. And so it's not just Akuma. It's like you guys said, Daichi's in there again, and Kosuke on the podium here this year for the first time at like 26 or 27 years old, something like that. Like he is not a young pup. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool to see. And I actually thought that in the first Alpe d'Huez World Cup in qualifying, I think he actually in my opinion, deserved the highest turn points. I think he should have probably been ahead in turn, not total score, but in turn points, he should have been ahead of both Mick and Akuma in the qualifying round. He could be an interesting dark horse to watch. The American women too, I think, crazy how good they are, and I in my opinion, they've underperformed, if anything, to this point as well for how good they are. Olivia, you guys know her much better than me, but from the outside, I think she's actually looked better in training, and it was pretty cool to see her on the podium, on the top of the podium in Ruka. And I feel like there's a general feeling that she's maybe been underscored once or twice too, being the only girl doing back full and cork 7 and cork 10 as well now too. So pretty cool to see. But the other American women as well, I think their best stuff is really scary good, and consistency has been elusive. So that's the one tricky thing at the games, just with the Olympic format, consistency becomes a little bit more important. So it will be interesting. It'll be interesting to see, but feel like there are a few more big players going into the games this year, and it should be exciting.
Now, kind of speaking to that a little bit, luckily 3 of the members here have been to an Olympics to kind of give people on the outside that are not aware, just into some of that insight of the preparation, not only as a coach or and also like as an athlete. Just would love to get Rob, your insight on part of that preparation, especially if you have, certain athletes that are, supposed to be favorites, as Mick, was in 2018, what kind of pressure that was, and how much with those other athletes is the difficulty of, is it that top to bottom percentage and like, hey, this is the run we go with. You're hitting this thing 85, 90% on this course. Let's not try to be outside of our comfort zone. Let's do what we know how to do. And then after you're finished there, Zemba and Mr. Murphy, Murphy as an athlete, touch on what that's like to kind of go through and that preparation, how much it changes, because it's always one of those things. I feel like if you're on the outside and you always try to tell them like, hey, it's just another event. It's a World Cup, at the end of the day, it's bumps, a jump, bumps, another jump. There's just a few more people watching, but you try to calm yourself down, but then the reality of the situation sets in. You're at the top of the fucking course and you're like, oh boy, this is it. This is everything I've trained for, everything I've worked for, and I have 22 seconds.
Yeah. The Olympic Games, you can tell yourself as much as you want that it's just like any other event, but it ain't, that's for sure. There is nothing else like it. And it's very different. Every games I've been to was different in its own way. For Mick specifically, between the last 2, we felt like it was more important to have more or as much kind of specific preparation as we could possibly get going into Sochi. So we had more kind of particular projects for our pre-Olympic training. Going into Korea, we just wanted to have a fun camp just to keep guys sharp and just make it really safe to jump big and do full DD and try to keep their foot on the gas and just rip a bunch of runs. Phil Marquis, of course, was in a different boat, like trying to go to the Olympic Games with no ACL. That was a little bit of a special project for him, but for Mick and for Marc Antoine, we just wanted to have a really fun camp, stay sharp, and just jump big, ski fast, and keep it as safe as possible to do so. And I think we achieved that both times. This year is going to be interesting for these guys. I don't know. I had spent 5 or 6 weeks training on the Olympic venue with the Chinese skiers here this past spring, and it is going to be a different course. It's going to be a big, tough course. It's going to be a beast, I think. For sure, the preparation will be better for the games, obviously, than it was for our training last February and March. But it's a solid 29 degrees, top to bottom, with all man-made snow. It's kind of like small, sharp moguls on. It's like Val St. Com, but without as much kind of flattening out before the bottom air. It stays it does a little bit, but it's a pretty steady 29 degrees top to bottom. It's going to be a good test for everybody.
So definitely has that aggressive, gnarly kind of consistent pitch and everything else. That's interesting. So Murph, on your preparation for going into the O show and just kind of what lies ahead for these athletes as they prepare for the games, and also it's going to be much different games, but just some of your prep that kind of went in.
Yeah. So like you're talking about like from this point on, I imagine, which is, like you're kind of, it's almost like buckle up and like you're ready for the ride. I don't know. Being like my first Olympics and only one I went to, you don't have like a great sense of what to expect from like the time that team is named until like you get there and you're in the gate, I guess. So, right now that I think they just wrapped up their training camp in Deer Valley, and we did the same thing. And that was a great way to prepare. We had, that full champion course with 2 really nice jumps, and we did a bunch of prep on it. So it was in really good shape, challenging, but not like not going to hurt yourself challenging. So that was a good way to prepare for sure. You felt like you were going to ski that course and you could ski it well, and you were going to put down your tricks and have clean exits. Then, you felt pretty confident going into Korea, I thought. And we had the fortune of skiing in Korea the year before, and so we kind of knew what we were getting into. So that was nice. And then getting to the games, and you have so much more time to prepare than normally you do, like at a normal World Cup. So I can't remember, Rob will know more than I do, or Zemba, but I feel like there was like 5 days of training or something like that. It was kind of wild. So that's like a whole new thing.
Yeah. It was a lot, and like some was in the afternoon, some was at night, and then we switched. Like qualifying day was first thing in the morning. Like it's a wild schedule. It's like he said, like from the moment I think we were all sitting in Treblant and the team's named, it's like buckle up for the ride. Like,
yeah, for sure. So it feels like, you go through your whole life doing mogul skiing, and there's this very structured thing. You fly to the place, you register, even from when you're really little, like from when you're going to a NORAM or a nationals, you get 2 days of training, you compete for 2 days, and then you get out of there and go to the next place. So this was different. Like we flew in, I think we had like almost a week before we even skied of just like processing and getting to the village and, waiting to get to training. And that's going to be really interesting this year because it'll be obviously a lot more testing, COVID testing and isolation. We were kind of like, relaxing and getting used to the jet lag and kind of not really sightseeing at that point, but definitely a little bit more relaxed than I think it'll be this year. And then, yeah, you get like plenty of training, like too much training where you need to like really be cognizant of how much you're doing and what days are going to train hard and what days are going to be your rest day, and just kind of trying to navigate that where you want to be peaking obviously for the event. So you train light at the beginning and then ramp it up. Like that stuff was just interesting to try to figure out. And then finally, like the games themselves, the format's different, as Rob alluded to earlier, where, usually you would, get your couple training runs in the morning, do your qualification run, hopefully make it to finals, and then hopefully make it to the super final all in one day. And if you're skiing well that day, it bodes well for you because you can kind of carry that momentum through the day. And I always felt like that helped me. And at the Olympics, it's not like that because you will do your qualification run and then that's it for that day. And then if the format is the same as it was last time, which I haven't looked at the schedule, but is it true that you would do a qualification run and then take a day off and then go back for your final? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think last time, wasn't it? Didn't they do the Q1?
Q1
exactly,
like before the opening ceremonies, and then the Q2 was.
Yeah, so Q1
had to do the Q2.
Yeah, Q1 was like 1 day, and then Q2 through super final.
I think Q1 was like the day of opening ceremonies, and then the girls were the next day finals.
Oh yeah,
and
we had a day off.
Then wasn't it like Q2 and then like 2 days after opening ceremonies, I want to say.
Yeah,
I think you're right. Yeah.
So that was, for me, that was tough because I felt like I had a pretty strong qualifying run, and then just kind of lost that momentum really. And it wasn't like I felt any different. Like you said earlier, you kind of know it's the Olympic Games, like you can try to treat it like any other event. And I think that's what most athletes try to do. It's certainly what I did. And I think it worked for the most part, like being at the top of the gate or being in training, it doesn't feel a whole lot different. I think subconsciously it's definitely there. And then like those, like the actual competition runs, like there's more butterflies there than you're normally experiencing, at least for me. But yeah, it's tough to navigate. Like if you have a good qualifying run and you do well in that Q1, having the whole day to like sit and think about it is tricky before you go out for Q2. So that's kind of some of the insights and feedback from me that, just thinking back on it, those were some of the takeaways. But everything was super cool. I remember having so much fun in those training days. I remember showing up the first day to the first day of like slipping and looking down at thing, and everybody, I don't know, Zemba and Rob will probably remember, like, what is this? The moguls were like gigantic pyramids. They were like waist deep pyramids, and I was like, that does not look right. But when you actually like got in there, it was like some of the nicest mogul skiing I've done. So
yeah, when I first saw that course, Troy, because we, especially for Phil Marquis in particular, like thinking back to the year before, I thought that course was pretty easy.
And smaller moguls for sure.
Moguls, and my heart just sank when I first got to the top of the course. Like for that first side slip, is right away I'm thinking this is not going to work for Phil. This is not going to work, and I was pretty nervous for him. Of course, we want to get out of there without making matters worse, and he ended up doing pretty darn good under the circumstances. But I was pretty scared for him when we first got to that course, because you're right, those things were like it looked like an army of stegosaurus going down the hill.
Right,
it was crazy, but it skied really well. You could stay right in the tight line, not get anywhere near those points. And
I remember like after the first, we showed up and did the slip, and I'm like, man, this team leaders meeting, there's going to be a lot to be brought up. And then like the athletes came down, they're like, no, it was sweet. Like, it's good. We're like, okay, we'll run with that then.
No, it's good to hear that everything, ended out pretty well for the most part, but that hard fact of being able to, that extra day of like waiting, it does show you those that are mentally prepared and everything else. I mean, that was one of those things I remember as an 8-year-old watching 98. I think it was on TNT when they did it. It was because Mosley won qualifying the first day, and then it was the next day they ended up doing finals. And I was like, man, I would be really nervous if I knew I won the first day and then I had to go down that thing again. Like, oh boy, like you're sitting there just waiting all day. Like, all right, you just have one run now. But yeah, no, it's super interesting to be able to get that timing, because it is so unique in our sport for the most part. You do everything all in one, it's all done in one day, and you don't have to wait very long, especially with how these events run. They want the super final done like that. They want everything on for TV. So as soon as you get around, let's get everyone in the gate, get stuff done. And so it's definitely interesting to give you that extra time to kind of sit and think about what's to come. Now, one thing I just want to touch on with you guys, I know it's been interesting to see the picking of the Olympic team, at least for the U.S. Rob, I'd love to get your insight on this as well with the Canadian team. But for the U.S., there was definitely, I know there was a lot of people that were, some were upset. There were some petitions sent out. There was a lot in there that I think was interesting with some of the athletes. And I don't know who it was that ended up when they passed the pre-qualifying, that some people were certainly upset with that. I think on the women's side, that a couple of the females that did pre-qualify, you had Hannah and Jalen that had earned their Olympic starts from off really their results off of the year before, and the U.S. team decided to do off of FIS points. And some of those results ended up being when those FIS points are based off of singles and duels. So some of those results that they had ended up not even being events that are used for singles in the Olympics. Some of those were dual events. And I know that the theory and the thought process on it is to give those athletes more time to essentially focus just on the Olympics. Like, hey, we want you peaking for the games. Like, there's no pressure. You can go in, you can put in that time and get that result at the Olympics. And we'll see if it ends up paying off at the Olympian. We'll find out in a couple of weeks here if that was the right call for those athletes that ended up going. And I know that was something that I think Tess was one of the ones who obviously was left out. And I know there's a lot of people upset that she didn't get named to the team. And, Lemley as well, that they had some of the better results than some of those other girls, but were left off. But I think Tess was one of those athlete reps that really pushed for more of those guarantees to make sure they are a part of the pre-qualifying. Hey, we don't want the pressure going into the Olympics and that stuff. We want to be able to focus on the games and not having to get those results. So it is that catch-22, which I think I'm pretty sure it was Taz. You guys can tell me if I'm wrong on this or blabbering on and on, but just kind of your thoughts. I mean, there's a real fight there at the end, and then the deciding to go with Akai, who potentially, didn't have the same results. I mean, clearly you have Tess, who's 5th in the world, has 2 podiums this year. And then they decided to go with Kai, who obviously has 1 podium. She missed a couple events with concussion, and she does have higher FIS points based off of, I think, her duels win at Deer Valley last year. On the men's side, it didn't really seem to change really too much. I was curious what they were going to do, if they were just going to go off of those FIS points or not. And to give full names for those people out there that don't know, we're talking about Tess Johnson being left out for the Olympics. Those 4 girls that did end up going, it was Jalen Koff and Hannah Soar, who pre-qualified off of some results from essentially last year towards the end of the season. They had qualifying events, and FIS points went into that as well, which is essentially an accumulation of your best 2 results. I want to say it's over a 1 or a 2-year period, but they also extended that period with COVID. So if you're kind of outside the sport and listening in, just to give you that. And then the 2 that made it off of would have been Olivia Giacchio, and then of course Kai Owens there. On the men's side going, there's Bradley Wilson, Nick Page, Cole McDonald, and then of course Dylan Walzak. And super pumped for Dylan to be going to the shows. Curious how that was going to end out, but Lars, we'll start with you. Just kind of thoughts on how all that. I know there's been a big uproar on some of that decision making, and just kind of your thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's been pretty wild to actually kind of watch it all unfold. And I saw the petition go out. I did not sign it, but it's been really interesting to kind of watch and kind of see it all develop. And I totally understand, that rule, that top 6 rule, if to be able to pre-qualify. And if you're in that, the weight that's kind of taken off your shoulders, I think it totally makes sense. But I think it kind of makes sense for the anomalies. It makes sense for, the Michaela Schifrins, for the Kingsbury. It makes sense for those number 1 people in the world or in that top 6 who really do have a really good chance of being able to medal. It gives them the time to actually, take a step back, evaluate what they're doing, and actually get ready for the Olympics. But unfortunately, I think where the biggest mistake was made was it wasn't, that rule wasn't evaluated for the women's mogul team or the mogul team in general. Women's mogul team and men's slope style, I think we're also seeing a backfire there as well. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think so. I think it's Kobe Stevenson, yeah. I think on the men's side, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Yeah. So it's hard to see that in that sense where, on paper, we knew that rule was going to make things really difficult for those, 6 women fighting for those 4 spots. And I don't want to say it wasn't fair, but I wanted to see kind of a gun show for those 6 girls to go out and actually fight for those 4 spots in the 7 qualifying events that we've had. So I think that was really tough to see. But also on the other side of things is we knew the rules, we knew the criteria. So on that being said, like seeing all this uproar and people fighting that Tess should have been named, it's hard to kind of go along with that in the sense that the criteria was there, the rules were set, and everybody knew those rules. And life isn't fair. And I think that's one of the big takeaways that I've kind of taken from that is you can't, just because you think you should be there doesn't mean you necessarily deserve to be there, in the sense of the rules that are at hand and whether the right rules or the wrong rules. So I've played this kind of battle between myself and trying to figure out what side I actually want to stand on, and I still don't know yet. It's been a tough one because I feel for Tess. I can't imagine what she's going through. But also, everybody's known those rules, and whether she help implement those within the mogul team, I don't know. But it's been hard to watch in that sense. So I don't know which side I stand on, and I have ideas for both. But it's whether the pre-qualified people, as in Hannah and Jalen, are taking this time to prep for the Olympics and get ready to put themselves in a position for a medal. Time will tell. So
Yeah, no,
We'll see.
it's definitely one of those things it's tough to certainly navigate. Troy, what I know you're obviously on one of the committees for the ski team, and just kind of your thoughts on how this has unfolded so far, the drama.
Yeah, it's been a tough couple of weeks as far as this goes for sure. And really, any way you look at it, you know, it's somebody is getting left home, and that person that would be left home is going to be a really strong skier and a medal contender for sure. So I don't think there was no like great way to slice it, but on the other side of that coin, like that means that we have a very strong women's mogul team, and we have a lot of women who are strong contenders. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. As far as like the pre-qualification goes and that criteria, I mean, I don't know that I agree with it going forward. Like I think there's probably some things we'll look into and look to change before the next one. But like Lars said, I mean, this has all been in place for 2 years now or more. So like rules have been set. Everybody's well aware of them. The people, you know, people were in the committees. It was voted on, and we kind of need to, I think, you know, gather around as an organization and a country, and you know, support what the decisions that we've made and stand by them and stick with the team that's going, because we have a very strong team going. And I think like getting caught up in petitions and getting caught up in like these Instagram battles and things like that is like the worst thing you could ever do to prepare for an Olympics. So I think it's gonna the test of the time will be to see how we do there, and what those women who are pre-qualified, how they do. Hopefully they do great. Hopefully the whole team does great. But at the end of the day, I think, you know, we had our criteria in place. The rules were well known, and I think we just need to rally behind our teams now and try to get somebody standing on the box and standing with a medal. That's kind of the end goal. So that's kind of my perspective on it.
Mr. Zemba.
Yeah, some salient points brought up by Mr. Murphy and Mr. Johnson there. I've kind of followed with Lars to go back and forth about what is maybe the right way. I see 1 foot planted on each side of the line. Maybe like to touch on what Troy was just saying, like everyone kind of knew the rules of engagement, the rules of doing business for the past 2 years. So there shouldn't be too many surprises. So getting into a huge uproar of like, oh, this person qualified this way. Well, if that's what's been etched in stone for a couple of years now, then like what are we talking about? Like it's been there. But maybe touching a little bit about what Lars was saying, maybe some of those rules were made for the top 0.5% with the Michaelas and mix in mind. Maybe it needs to be more in tune with current results of that year. Perhaps you reward after half the season's been done, the top 5. If you land in the top 5, okay, like you're good for the next 2-3 weeks. Go and train up. But then you bounce back to kind of what Troy was saying. The good thing is we have a lot of, you could reach your name into a hat with the U.S. women's team, pull a name out, and you're like, yeah, that person could win today. Like that's not a bad problem to have. I will say with Hannah and Jalen, like you look at their past results in China, you got Hannah got her first podium there. Jalen's won there 3 times. Like there's some strong resorts to support. They could ski those tiny bumps and steep pitches. So you weigh that into the equation. It's kind of really tough to draw the line in the sand of what's right, what's wrong. I think at the end of the day, like there's a really strong women's team going, and that's what we should be happy and proud about. And yeah, there's no real, it's a tough call, but you can make arguments for all different sides. But the important thing to remember is there's a strong team going. So let's hope they do well.
Mr. Kober.
Yeah, I would echo what the other gentlemen have said here. You guys have a great team, a great women's team, and a very promising men's team as well. And hopefully Tess Johnson and Elizabeth Lemley, they'll take that as motivation. I think they're both awesome, and if they stay healthy, they've got very bright futures ahead of them, and hopefully they'll just take that on as a challenge for the future, and they'll stick around for another 4 years or a few more Olympic cycles. I kind of, to echo what Lars said too, I think that pre-qualification kind of process. We had it in Canada as well, but I think it really is, that should be reserved for those athletes that are a very high percentage of converting a medal regardless of what happens. Like for me, that kind of thing would be to protect someone like, like a Jen Heil or a Hannah Carney, in case they had some kind of minor injury before the games, then they don't have to sweat it. For everybody else, I think you want to keep their feet in the fire. You want to, you want them to prove to everybody, what you can do. What have you done for me lately? It's like that. And as much as it may be uncomfortable and it might not be the popular option with the athletes, they need to get used to that pressure. And I believe you're going to see better performances from the kids that have been, had their feet held in the fire. And it's not necessarily, you want to stay sharp going into the games, and you don't stay sharp by resting. You stay sharp by training. And that, as a coach, I think that's a lesson I've learned the hard way a couple of times. I think that was why, part of why the Canadian team fell on our faces at the World Championships in 2017. We kind of decided we need a little break before World Championships instead of finding a good place to train and try to stay sharp. And I think that's, there's multiple variables, but I think that's one of the reasons why we underperformed at those World Championships. So yeah, I think that pre-qualification, I'm not a big proponent of that, other than for the very, creme de la creme.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd rather ride the hot hand then, Rob? Is that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What do you say then for something like, I do think like there is something to say about Olympic experience though too. Like I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on like, right? You think of someone that comes to mind for me is someone like Julia Mancuso. Like you look at her World Cup career and it's like not all that like doesn't jump off the page, and then you just like click the filter on FIS to Olympics and you're like, holy cow, like this, all she ever did was get Olympic podiums. Like what's there to be said about maybe someone hasn't performed lately, but at least they have that Olympic experience?
No, well, that's a good point too. That is a good point. I think, not just the ones that have the experience and that are proven performers in the Olympic Games, but I can't help but think of, from Canada, how would Andy Noddy have ended up in Korea had she had the opportunity to go to Sochi? I think, boy, I can't help but think that, Andy's chances of being on that podium at the end of the day 4 years ago would have been quite a bit higher if she'd already experienced that in Sochi. So yeah, Bryan, you're right. Like there is another side to that coin. Absolutely. But I guess at the end of the day, I still believe in competition. And I think that's why we all do it. And hopefully in our sport, in a judge sport, in an individual sport, it's hard to have a fair selection criteria. I think probably we've all kind of suffered through those kind of processes as athletes and coaches, and it's tough to have a fair one, but you got to do the best you can. And I think the athletes need to know that they can, they might disagree, like you guys might have some short-term disagreement with the system, but if it was in place for 2 years, then I think you send the right message by, sticking to your guns and respecting that process. The athletes have to, believe that the system is at least going to protect them. And when you start messing around with things, trying to tweak rules after the fact or using coaches' discretion, I hate, as a coach, I hated ever using coaches' discretion. I think that, that takes the sport out of sport. And you want kids to trust you. I want, if it's going to come down to kind of discretion and we're always tweaking the rules, then why have a sport to begin with? Why won't we just choose the team and just go to the Olympics every 4 years? I think, it's about competing, and you just got to do the best you can and have a fair system and then respect that as much as you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one of those things you touched on, Bryan, that just made light bulb go off. I mean, I thought that was one of the reasons the ski team, moved criteria around earlier back when they were trying to push old people like you and me out and making the age limits and everything else. Tess was like one of the first ones on with that 14. And I thought that was part of the prep to get some of those athletes so they would get an O show out of the way, to be able to get that experience 4 years ago to then go in and take out to get that peak for the next, you've gotten that one Olympics out of the way. I mean, Tess is a prime example. She's only like 20, 21 years old. And for me, it's frustrating to watch. I mean, you got somebody that's 5th in the world that's not going to the Olympics. I don't know how many sports that's happening. I think that's pretty rare. And I understand the fact of the pre-qualification. I mean, I definitely agree with Lars and Rob. I mean, pretty much everybody on the fact that it is difficult to be pre-qualified when maybe, you're not a Michaela Schifrin, you're not a Mikhail Kingsbury, you're not a David Wise that has dominated the sport for years, clearly is going to bring home a medal. I think that's maybe what frustrated the most people is I think from the people watching their eyes and everything else, I don't know that the 4 best women to give the U.S. a medal opportunity are going. I think that's tough. I think an argument can be made on the men's side as well. You look at, George, he has the 3rd best result of the Americans on the men's side. I know he crashed in the super finals, but if we're going off of results, you have Nick with a 4th place, you have Cole with a 5th, and then George is 3rd with a 6th place. If we're going off of results this season, and then you'd have Dylan with I think he was just outside in Tremblant with the 7th. So I think that and obviously there's a lot of politics and a lot of things that go into it, but from a coach's perspective, you want the people that are going to, get you the medal. That's what you're in for every 4 years. And I think, from an athlete perspective, it's super frustrating. I mean, Murphy, you were there, you got 4th at Val St. Côme, and they ended up taking 2 people. And that was a whole different thing when they added in slope style and everything else. But I mean, I think that you certainly had the results to go to Sochi in 2014, and we're kind of left to watch. So it's frustrating, and obviously you want to take the best of the best, and somebody's always gonna be left home. That's the way the world works. And to Lars' point, there's going to be losers, there's going to be people left on the outside. It's certainly been frustrating to watch, though, and I think that's a lot of those girls that are pre-qualified. You look at a Jalen, I think her top result is like 11th or 12th, and maybe she's tinkering, she's trying to do some different things and peaking for that Olympics. But I think you look at the history of people trying to tinker or peak and like, oh, this event isn't that important, this is the one that really matters. I don't think that really works out that well. It seems pretty fucking important to Mikhail Kingsbury to go out and win every single World Cup. He's not like, you know what, I'm going to try and tinker and let's peak here and let's worry about that event. I'm pretty sure he's going out to kick everybody's ass every time he steps on the hill.
I think all valid points, but I think these conversations would have been better had 2 years ago.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. Sure.
Yeah.
While we're on the topic, Rob, can you fill us in on who exactly, I don't want it to be completely U.S. focused. I want to include our neighbors to the north. Can you fill us in a little bit who's definitely going for the Canadian squad?
I believe it's just 3. I believe it's just Justine, and on the men's side, Mick and Laurent Dumais. And I think that's it.
Huh? Wow.
I had heard that Sophie Gagnon and Chloe. I had heard 3 women and 2 men.
Yeah, it was posted not that long ago. So Chloe, Justine, yeah, Sophie Ann, and then
is that right? Okay, well,
yeah, and then Laurent Dumais and Michaela are going.
I thought it was just the one.
Whoops! I didn't mean to roll you there, Rob. Sorry.
No worries. No worries.
Oh, too good. Oh, that's a bummer. I was pulling for Brendan Kelly there and a couple of those other guys. It's interesting. Well, I guess that's probably a situation where they're running out of spots, because I think I was surprised, to be quite honest, that we're sending as many men. But then you look at the skier cross side, you're like, okay, we're sending 1 skier cross person. We're like, Canada dominates in skier cross. So I'm sure they kind of looked at the medal count. Okay, who could be on the box, and that's a sport that definitely could bring you guys home some medals. So I'm sure that must have had a say in it.
Yeah, we're pretty, I think, unfortunately for the mogul skiers, we're pretty strong in the other disciplines right now. And, that that was one of the things that I was most proud of. And some of the, and going into Sochi, going into Vancouver when ski across first came in, it was a challenge to field a full quota on the Mogul side. And I think the competition for our kids from half pipe and slopestyle, and especially ski across, is pretty stiff.
Mm-hmm. Now, how much on your side and going through, and obviously you've had a few different Olympics to go through and those athlete selections. I mean, was that process pretty straightforward? Or were there ever times that you did have to pull out, I know, as much as you didn't want to, that coach's discretion, and be like, okay, I'm gonna kind of go outside the world here? Or were you pretty much
never for the Olympic Games?
Never.
No,
okay.
never. We had a pretty hardwired selection process, which I think was largely pretty good. It's pretty basic, just based off of placing points. The couple of times that I thought it kind of backfired on us is when, Phil Marquis almost didn't get to go to Sochi because of a result of, have all the respect in the world for our half pipe team and our half pipe, the coaches and the athletes, but we had a girl that I think she had a 4th or 5th place at a half pipe World Cup in Calgary, where there was only maybe 6 girls in the whole event. Mm-hmm. And, that kind of thing that just grossly skewed the results. And when you're counting just off placing points, that's just not fair. When Phil's got, 6th place out of 65 guys and a half pipe girl's got like a 4th place out of 6 girls, it just, that's just patently unfair. That was one instance. And then it didn't happen to us in moguls, but on the aerial side, it's kind of like a pretty basic, pretty straightforward base system, but then there's all these tiers within it. So it's like off placing points, but if you've got a 1st place and like 2 8s, that supersedes like the kid that's got 3 seconds kind of thing. Like, so there's all these tiers within, and they kind of jumped the gun and told I believe it was Ryan Blay, that he had a spot to go to the games in Vancouver, when by the points he did, but by the tiers he did not. And they had to go back and tell this poor guy that no, in fact, you're not going to the Olympic Games. And but yeah, we never used any coach's discretion in selecting for Olympic spots.
Mm-hmm. No, it's going to be well, that's good to hear, at least on that end. Stick by the books, stick with that. What so for you guys out there, what do you think is going to happen? There's not much. They canceled a lot after the Olympics, so I guess we should probably do our picks for the Olympics, who we think are going to go through. And I guess we'll go top 3 men's and women's. And I think this is going to be difficult because they did not get a test event on this, right, Rob? If I'm not mistaken, they didn't do a test event on it last year. I think it was supposed to be World Championships, and then they canceled it, right?
Yeah, it was supposed to be World Championships, and no, like I think most of the test events, I think in some disciplines, some other sports, they were able to do some test events this season, like just prior to. But for us, we were kind of the guinea pigs on that course between our team and the Chinese national team. We had a couple of little events on that course, but that was it. So it's going to be new for everybody, and it's going to be pretty interesting. I'd like to be at the top of that course on the first day of training, when everyone gets to see it for the first time. That should be interesting.
And what's the length on that?
Who's in charge of the whole course? Like, who's the chief of course? That'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Troy. I've been wondering that too. Because of COVID last year, they do have one fellow that's that kind of knows what he's doing, one course builder. So I think those guys, like, Toby's team, they kind of, together with this one guy, I think they built the course, and I think they did a pretty good job, but it's a very difficult venue to work on if you don't have pretty experienced people, and to maintain that course, boy, like, you need guys that know what they're doing, and we did not have that last year. So I'm not sure who is going to get the call to build that course, but hopefully they have a lot of support, a lot of guys helping out that know what they're doing, because they will need it.
I think they should
How
give Tony
similar-
Gilpin and Nat Sherman a call. Tony Gilpin, Nat Sherman.
Yeah.
But I think Tony doesn't want to get vaccinated, so I think he might be out. So I don't know if they're going to let him in if he's.
2 years ago, Timmy Marr actually signed a contract to be the chief of course for this Olympics. And then once
Really?
COVID happened, yeah, they pulled the contract and they were going to do everything from in-house.
How
So, I don't
similar?
know how much.
That'll be interesting.
How similar, Rob, would you say it is from down the street at Tai Wu?
Very similar.
Okay.
Very similar, but steeper and maybe just a hair longer. Tai Wu is pretty long too, though, I believe. Tai Wu's like 245 or something, 240, 245.
Yeah.
I think the Olympic course will be 250, 255.
Wow.
It's a nice, long, steep course. It's going to be a beast.
Now, do you know, are they planning on, would they use that event or that venue again in the future for World Cups and FIS going forward? Or you think it's one and done here and then back to Tai Wu? Or what,
so. I think it'll go back to Tai Wu. I think
Okay.
it'll go back to Tai Wu. I think after the games, that course will be dismantled. I don't know that for sure. That's speculation, but that would be my guess. I think it'll go back to Tai Wu.
Interesting. And how far is that from Beijing for, I mean, the athletes, I guess, to do, I think it's pretty early on. So I think opening ceremonies is kind of right before or right out. I think maybe the ladies, similar to 2018, where the ladies might get their training and first day of qualification kind of around opening ceremonies. How is it pretty far from Beijing?
It's an hour and a half on the
Hour and a
high-speed train, or like a 3 to 4 hour bus ride, depending on Beijing traffic.
The train's
it's
open
pretty
now.
Cool. The train is pretty cool. It moves.
Okay.
It moves. It's like 350 kilometers an hour kind of thing. That thing flies out there. So yeah, it was. I got to ride it a couple of times. It was about an hour and a half.
Very cool. So, I mean, I guess you guys have been able, Murphy, you've done very well at Tai Wu. Zemba, you guys have all been there. So you kind of have a little bit of an idea of who could come out and potentially show up there. And I feel like there's usually always one surprise on the box, not necessarily with the winner, but I feel like someone, Daichi, I don't think a lot of people saw coming in 2018 to get on the box there, at least on the men's side. So I'm curious. I guess we'll start with why don't we start with Rob? Rob, who's your call? Who do you think for men and women? We'll start with we'll go ladies first and then with the men.
Well, I think, on the ladies' side, as much as I hate to say it, I kind of hate to say, I'm kind of a fan. I'm a fan of the way she competes, the way she carries herself on the course. She's not my favorite skier, though, but I think Perrine is going to defend. I think, she has shown some chinks in her armor here this year, but I think really under pressure. And I think, she's kind of got that inner competitor in her. I think she's going to rise to the occasion. I think Perrine is going to be gold. I'm going to say Jakara Anthony, just because she's not necessarily flashy or the best girl out there, but she is so consistent. And I think consistency is going to be key to make it through to the super finals on a tough course like that. So I'm going to call Jakara for the silver. And I think Henri will squeak in there for the bronze still.
Interesting. Yeah.
On the men's side, I'm going with Mick. Like I said already, my money's on Mick. I think Mick's gonna defend his title. I think one of you guys said, it might have been you, Bobby, but I think they're not necessarily my favorite skiers technically either, but I think Lasse has done such a great job of building a strong team, and those guys have such a good kind of team dynamic amongst those Swedish men. And Ludwig has done well on the tougher courses over the years. I think he's going to be the dark horse and upset Akuma and push him down to the third rung on the podium. I think Akuma, his best stuff is he's definitely the guy that could upset Mick, but I think consistency for him too has been elusive. He's most of the runs, he's really been pretty clutch, but as far as having that really clean, mistake-free run, I think Mick is a better bet. And be interesting to see if Akuma can prove me wrong, but I call Mick gold, Ludwig Falstrom silver, and Akuma Horishima bronze on the men's side.
Interesting. And then if there's any, I guess let's go, we should probably do one maybe for each discipline, one or for each gender, one women's, one male kind of dark horse that maybe somebody would not see coming that sneaks into that.
Well, you guys, I'm going to steal your Wasatch Thunder, and I'm for a dark horse for me. I'm a big fan of Nick too. I'm a big fan of Nick Page. I think he's got a very bright future ahead of him. But I think Cole McDonald, for me, if he can find that that intensity and that kind of confidence that he had back at the FIS event, and then going into Ruka. Like I have to confess, Bobby, I was like, Cole, who's this Cole kid from the NORAMs? And I knew he was good, but then, I remember talking to Jordan, talking to my son about who was looking good on that course. And Jordy's like, no, yeah, Dad, you're going to eat those words when you see Cole training here in Ruka. Like, he looks really good. And then sure enough, I thought he might end up on the podium in Ruka too. So I think for me, Cole would be the dark horse on the guys' side. And on the women's side for a dark horse, that's a tough one, because I think, again, like, the U.S. team is so strong. I wouldn't consider any of those girls really dark horses. I think any of the U.S. women could end up on the podium. That wouldn't surprise me. I would maybe go with Kai. I think, like, her best stuff too is really, really good. Again, consistency though is the thing for her. If she could put down, the number of good runs in a row that she's going to need to make it through that final round, and then kind of show her best stuff in the final round, I would probably go with Kai Owens for a dark horse on the women's side.
Mm-hmm. No, I think those are all good picks. Lars, what are your thoughts?
Well, Rob really threw me for a curveball a little while ago when he was kind of giving an explanation on what the course is like, with how difficult it is, steep, long, sharp bumps. So it's, I don't think my picks are going to change all that much, but it definitely brings a lot of good insight on consistency and who's actually going to lay it down. And should I just do women, or should I do men and women?
Go men and women, and then let's throw a dark horse in there too. Yeah.
So women, I'm gonna go Perrine. I kind of think, with kind of some of the mishaps that she's had, and but with the experience and being reigning Olympic gold medalist, I think kind of those mistakes that she's had this year are gonna light that fire a little bit more, and kind of really make her be consistent and be focused, and really kind of put her best thing down to win that gold medal again. So I pick Perrine 1. I pick Henri 2, and if she can hit, so we're going back on difficulty, of course, consistency. I'm going to go OG 3. If she can land her full and ski out of her full, that's the biggest thing. And we'll see if she even goes with it, but I'm going to pick an American for 3rd with OG for the women. For the men, consistency, Olympic experience, I think goes, a very long ways. And I'm going to go Mick 1. I'm a firm believer of, postseason Super Bowls, the more experience that you have there, the better prepared you are, how to prepare for it, which I think is one of the most important things. And you have that experience, and you're comfortable. Nobody is necessarily comfortable in those situations, but the more times that you're in it, you can understand it a little bit more. And with understanding, you can kind of focus and physically work a little bit differently and more collectively to kind of get to that top spot. So I'm picking Mick 1. I'm going to go Ikuma 2. I think he's actually shown, in 2018, I don't know, Rob, if you even considered Ikuma being a threat to Mick in 2018 with, the lack of his consistency. But I think he's kind of shown, certainly this year, that he can put 3 really solid runs down. Now, can he do it over a span of a couple days? Time will tell, but I think I think Akuma is going to hold on to that number 2 spot. And third, right, young blood, Emerson was on the high horse, for Ruka and, couldn't stop talking about it. And all of a sudden comes out, and gets 5th in Ruka. And, I think Cole McDonald, I was skeptical in the first podcast that we had, but, I love, kind of seeing that young fire and kind of that, not necessarily careless attitude, but he's free out there. He skis wild, he skis fast, he skis strong. And I see Cole going 3.
Dark horse on either side for men and women.
I think I
or
just
is Cole the dark?
two
Is that
horses.
it? Is that who it is?
Yeah.
You're going OG and Cole are kind of your the yeah. Well, it's kind of fun. Well, the interesting thing on with OG, and the one thing that gives me, like, when I come with my picks, a little bit of pause is the moment. And it's the same thing for both of those guys. It's their first time going into the Olympics there, and how much, maybe there's not quite as much pressure because you aren't going to have any fans. It's going to be very sequestered. It's going to be very different Olympics in that regard. Of course, yes, it's still the Olympics, but I feel like that will make it very, very different. But that is one of those things where with Olivia, and I know she's had those issues in the past, and as had Cole, and I think he's really built and made steps upon that. But it's a different.
And I think they both have.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think they've kind of proven, a lot of that wrong to an extent. And, for Olivia, she could put a or she could, and Bryan, I think you were probably coaching her at this point, but she was one of the best trainers out there. And all of a sudden quals run, she can't ski out of a top air, and so, I really think she's kind of gotten that monkey off her back a little bit and kind of, really worked on that mental game. We know she has it physically, and I think she's proven that she's kind of gotten that monkey off her back a little bit and kind of can put 3 solid runs down, mistakes here and there, but she's consistently going super final. So, Olympic games, like you guys were kind of talking about, and those who've experienced it, totally different animal, right? So we'll see.
Yes, we will. Mr. Murphy,
but
it's your time for those loved picks.
All right. This one's tough because, again, like, hearing Rob's feedback about the course being really difficult didn't help me at all. And then, like, thinking back on the formatting and having a day to think about it, that doesn't help my case. But so yeah, I don't know. It's tough. But on the women's side, I think, man, I would love to like go with those young U.S. women on top spot. Like, to see Olivia do a 10 and like take down the top spot would be amazing. But I think consistency is going to be key over multiple days on a difficult course. So I think Perrine is probably the safest bet for the top spot there. And I'd also follow that up with Henri, because I think she's been fairly consistent. And I'm also trying to think, like, to those conditions, and I would expect it'll be like tight, really tight, firm, small moguls. Which maybe plays more of it into the men's side, but that would be my 1-2 for the women. And then third, I'm so torn between Olivia and Kai. I think either of them could, if they can hold it together, like we've all kind of been saying, they've got a great shot at it. Olivia, if she can do the 10 in a clean run, I think that would be, very strong argument for the podium. And then same with Kai. She's got the great jumps as well. Really nice cork 7 on the bottom and some really nice skiing. So, man, I'm gonna say Kai for third. And for a dark horse, might as well throw in Olivia. You can interchange those two. And in the men's side, I would definitely go with Mick. I think, just thinking to those conditions on what I would expect them to be, which again is those firm type moguls. I think he has the best shot of like skiing really clean, not making any mistakes, and like keeping it all under control, but still skiing really fast at a really high level. I think in those conditions, a guy like Akuma generally would like a little bit more bump, like a little bit bigger of a bump there to kind of get the feet on, to get some pressure on the backside, and to like keep the control, where I think a guy like Mick can just like really stay in the front of those boots and like just lock it in and hit all those backsides. So I'm going Mick 1, plus all the Olympic experience and consistency, and the guy's been there a million times. So that's a pretty safe bet. I'm gonna go Nick Page in second. I think that he's been building momentum over the past couple events here. I think that kind of skiing does suit Nick, and I think he's gonna show up with really nothing to lose and let the dogs bark and do some big tricks. Maybe see a 14. So I'm going with him. That's kind of a dark horse call, but I would like to see that. I also can see the argument for Cole, same thing. But I'm gonna go Nick second, and then I think I'll go Akuma in third. Kind of wild picks here. We'll see what happens. For a dark horse on the men's side, I think we've all made a strong argument for Cole. If I'm going dark horse, I'm going with Dylan Walczak.
Dilby.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. I think Dylan is due for a podium. It's been a minute. He can finally do a 10, which, and it looks pretty good when he does it well. And he can ski really challenging courses and make it look really nice, like really good technical skiing, good body position on a firm, what I expect to be small, tight course like that. I think he'll do really well. Plus, he obviously is generally pretty good at skiing through runs. Like, I know he hasn't made the super final this year, but he's getting through those finals, and I think he has the stuff to get that dark horse spot. So those are my picks.
All right, Mr. Zemba.
Oh, this isn't an easy conversation like the past three gentlemen have had. There's arguments for everyone. But I think on the girls' side, well, maybe the Olympic experience is in there, the momentum and consistency that Henri's bringing, and just like the training regimen that Japanese goes through. I think they're kind of well prepped. That Henri will continue her successful season and end up on the top of the box with Perrine right nipping at her tails in second, and then Jakara. We talk about building consistency every run. We talked about the Olympics is right. There's going to be mistakes. Who can either make the least mistake or the least noticeable mistake? And Jakara is pretty consistent, so I'll have her in third. And then it's like the wild card, dark horse. It's a crapshoot between all those girls on the U.S. team. They're throwing big tricks on a kind of like what Rob was saying, a jaggedy, sharp course, which has me like a little concerned in the consistency factor. And I know someone that likes tight moguls, sharp moguls. She has 3 wins, and I think a second in China is someone like Jalen. Like it's been a minute too to kind of touch about what Troy was saying, like that Dylan's kind of due for a podium, that Jaybird could be due for a podium, and she kind of likes the conditions over there. So she would be my dark horse in the girls' side. And then with the dudes, I'm gonna go with pillar consistency. Like I'm gonna go with Mick. Like shocker. We talked like to harp on again. There's gonna be mistakes. Who's gonna make the least noticeable mistake? Like Mick can miss a pole plant or 2, or have 1 step out, which is gonna be less of a mistake. When Akuma makes a mistake, it's noticeable for a couple bumps there for sure. So I'm gonna go Mick 1. In terms of touching on what Rob was saying, a strong men's team that they have, and the kind of the ski style and the course kind of jaggedy, quick edge to edge. I'm going to go with Walter 2, and then Akuma 3, just because the run's going to be exciting, but I feel like there is going to be one little moment, whether it be in the middle section or coming out of a bottom air, that we'll have them fall towards the lower end of the box. But then, so yeah, Mick 1, Walter 2, Akuma 3, and I'm going to piggyback on what Troy was saying, that dark horse Nick Page, I think, is going to be in the mix as well there. Suits his style, due for a big moment, but it's a flip-flop between Nick and Cole, but Nick just has a little bit more experience of being in the gate in big moments, so I'm going to go with Nick.
No, definitely. You guys thrown out a lot of really good picks, so it makes it really hard. You kind of go back and forth. And Zemba, you stole a little bit there because I was putting Walter on my box, so I was like, Especially, he
Gotcha.
really impressed me in Tremblant and in Idre, those smaller courses, just skiing so fast. He was, and at Deer Valley, at least watching from a hotel room, looked like he was going huge with that full, taking the 10 to a good spot, and he skis so fast, so aggressively, and I think that at least on the men's, I'm gonna definitely have Walter in my box. I'm gonna go with Mick, number one here. I think he's coming back, and I think Mick. Not only is he the most consistent skier and everything else, but he's aware of the sport and he's aware of the history, and he knows that Bilodeau has won double gold, and that is certainly on his mind. I haven't talked to him about it directly, but at least in knowing him well, he doesn't want any part of history. He wants every part of history. I mean, everything that there can be won, he wants to win. So if Bilodeau's got 2 golds, he most certainly wants to have match him with that. And so I think he'll go in, he'll win. I think in second place, it's gonna be I'm picking Walter in second as well. I think him, nice, aggressive. He's kind of been flying under the radar. I mean, he skied really well in Tremblant and everything else as he's kind of built back from that knee injury and everything else. I've been really just so aggressive and fast.
For someone third in the world, he's flying under the radar.
He's very much flying under the radar. There's no question. And in third place, certainly flying under the radar, I'm going with Matt Graham. And I think that part of that is the fact that I think Desovic has everybody as prepped as possible. Those Australians do such a good job. And I think they'll have such a pre-Olympic camp in Ruka. And so I think Matt will come back strong from that collarbone. And luckily it is just a collarbone. I mean, it's usually just a few screws, nothing really too crazy. It's not like an AC separation where you really have to deal with too much. I'm sure obviously there's a certain amount of rehab and everything that goes into it, but Matt's so dynamic and everything else. And I just see Akuma, especially over the course of a couple days and everything else, making a mistake or two. You know, I think if you look back over the last 3 or 4 years on who's going to be most consistent when it matters most, you know, and Matt has that Olympic experience. You know, he's gotten a silver before, so I really see a Matt stepping up and skiing well. And then I think Cole for the dark horse, you know, it's if he's going to be able to handle his emotions and just go through, and if he can just go top to bottom and ski his run and not try to do too much. You know, there's a lot of the things we talked about in Idre and everything else. Like, dude, the talent just oozes off of him, and it's just, you know, let's keep things simple. It's not if he's able to do that, I think he could most certainly be on the box. But right now I'm picking Mick, Walter to step up, and Matt Graham. And then on the women's side, I'm picking Jakara. I think Jakara Anthony is going to come out. She's so consistent, and you know, it kind of reminds me of Dale back in the day. Like, nothing sexy, nothing too crazy, like, but everything is land pinned and just consistent. May not be the fastest time, but it's within a second, it's within reach. And there's really not too much as a judge you can take away from the run. You're like, wow, that was really good. And, you know, yeah. So I think Jakara is actually going to come in upset. I think she will get the win. And I think that Perrine will finish in second. I see Perrine in second. And then I'm going with Henri in third. So I think Japan will be on the podium there. And then the dark horse on the women's side, who's no one's really kind of talked about, but showed up at World Championship last year, Anastasia Smirnova of Russia, really kind of showed out. And of course, with, you know, we're a pivot slide, the judges don't really seem to care too much if it's tight bumps, as long as she stays tight. Another one I think would be a dark horse on a course like that would be Yulia Galasheva. It's, you know, you can't really deduct much when she has no separations. It might be windshield wipers coming down the course, but if you don't separate, it's hard to pull anything away from that. So I think Russia will kind of, Anastasia Smirnova is kind of my dark horse to maybe make some moves in there. And then Olivia could come through with the 10. It's just the consistency with that. And if she's going to really, really do that, I mean, in watching in Tremblant, there was absolutely, and I know it's her first time ever doing that in an event, but you could clearly see as soon as she landed her full, she made about 3 turns and she was thinking about that 10. And it was like, okay, like there was a clear, from watching her training and watching some of her qualifying and everything else, you could see there was a clear set in of, okay, she was thinking about it the entire time. The tone of turn and everything else was not quite the same. And that's what makes me, kind of put Mick a little bit on, or Nick Page on the outside a little bit, is if he's going to go 14. It's one of those things watching in Ruka where he had some really nice skiing, and then you saw him completely change up and get super wide and change his turnaround. And if that's what he's been building for with those US athletes, you can definitely just see, at least from me watching training and watching, being able to do some of the commentary, like the tone changes when that big DD and everything else. The run definitely is not the same. And if I can notice it, I'm pretty sure the judges can notice it. So those are my picks for the O show there.
Good call, Bobby. I'm kind of jealous on the Anastasia dark horse. I kind of forgot about the Russians, but if she can find the form that she had when she was training at IDRA before the Russian team moved to Ruka, like for sure, it's an easy course. Could be a misleading sample, but the way she carried herself on that course, she was like, in training, she was the girl to beat, in my opinion, on that course. And then when the World Cup, like, I think she did okay. I'm not super familiar with what her results were in those early World Cups, but you could see the change in her demeanor as well. If she can kind of find that confidence, that's a little bit the same as Cole too, I think, like just the way Cole carried himself. And, I think he's done well since then. And I wasn't in Deer Valley, but you could see it. Like, it's not that he wasn't confident anymore, but in IDRA for the FIS event, and then in Ruka, it was like he believed in himself, just the way, like, he was walking around like he was the man. And if he can find that again, that's kind of why I think he's my dark horse. And the other guy I kind of forgot about, but just to throw another one out there that I think a young man that's really kind of starting to figure it out now, really very well coached, is Cooper from Australia.
Absolutely.
I think Cooper could surprise some people here. He's just kind of like putting things together and starting to build his confidence too. And on a tough course like that, if he can be consistent, he's another guy that could surprise us.
No, absolutely. He's skiing super, super well. And, it's kind of funny what Rob is going to be, was on the podcast, and that'll be coming out this week. And one of those things that we talked about, where I'm curious when he takes that, not just him, but athletes in general, of when you take that next step with the degree of difficulty. Because I feel like that's the one. I mean, he's got a smoke show of a run to a full to cork 7, but I feel like if you really want to be able to challenge that Mikhail Kingsbury or that Akuma Hiroshima, you're really going to need that degree of difficulty on a consistent basis. Because I mean, the dynamic skiing, I mean, Steve Desevich, the head coach there, has them all skiing at such a great level, and Peter and Kate Blamey, they all have them skiing so highly. But it's one of those things that I'm curious when, because that will really make the difference. That's when he will be that Matt Graham level of being able to knock those other guys kind of off the box there.
Yeah.
Well, guys, any final thoughts here? We've had a bunch of time to talk some shop on some mogul skiing, so I'm glad. I guess we'll do. I think we should do a post Olympics, talk about that, and then maybe do a little kind of end of the World Cup, kind of preview those last couple events. I know a few got canceled. We still do have Kalmady on the schedule, at least that dual mogul event, and then of course World Cup finals in Megève, singles and duels. But any final thoughts here, guys? Lars, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I do have a question. Does anybody know, or has anybody seen the schedule for this Olympics? I do know it kind of seems like, the mogul team is only going to be there for a week. I know the border cross team they kind of get in, they race, and they go to opening ceremonies, race and leave, with it kind of being a COVID year and kind of getting athletes in and then shuttling them out pretty quick. Are they changing the schedule at all? Have you guys heard anything about that?
So the event program, as I have it right now, will be January 30th will be the first day of training. January 31st, you got 4 days of training, which is not the typical nowadays. Usually it's about 2 and go. So you have 4 days. And then Thursday, February 3rd, will be the women's qualification, the Q1, and then men's training and men's Q1. So that'll be on February 3rd. And then Friday the 4th, there was a training session, so you'll get a day off on Friday the 4th to be able to train, and then that Saturday.
Friday the 4th is also opening ceremony.
Also opening ceremony. So there you go.
So
yep.
So that's maybe potentially why the training day.
And then Saturday, you will have the qualification 2 and men's finals, And then that Sunday, you will have women's qualification 2 and women's finals. So they will have plenty of time the women will have a few days to think about it.
Yeah. They're using every day possible.
Men will have qualifying, training day, compete.
Yep.
Women will have qualifying, training day off, compete.
Yes.
Woo.
Yep.
That's gnarly.
Way to sit on those thoughts.
That's what the men had to do in Sochi, I believe. We had a day off, and it was
we had 1 day off in Korea.
Yeah. I don't know, Troy, like, what do you do?
They'll have a training day and a full day off. So that's like 2 days of not competing. That seems wild.
Yeah.
Like, as coaches, we like Rob. I mean, Rob certainly can speak to this considering his experience more than mine, but like, we're still up there working. But what did you do on those off days, the in between time? Like, I know one day we went down to the Sea Village and got some McDonald's, but like, what do you do to kind of stay busy and keep your mind off things?
Man. I think on that off day we just exactly that, just chilled, like tried to sleep in and watch movies and stuff. Like, we couldn't go to the course and ski because the women were competing that day, so we watched the women. But just tried to kill time.
Yeah, with the Canadian team in Korea, it just seemed like there was always something, and which was good for me because for sure it was very intense. It was pressure filled. But I think there was just, at the time, it seemed like too much. Like, there was just debriefs here and meetings there, and it just seemed to be nonstop. And I think that was, for me personally, that was good in the long run because it did keep me occupied. Otherwise, I would have been losing my mind. But for sure, it was, now it's fun now to think about, but it was pressure for sure. I was feeling it the whole time. And I don't know. For some reason, I was able to sleep in Korea, but pretty much every waking hour, I was sitting on pins and needles. So it was oof.
And is it Rob? Would it be harder in knowing that you have like an expected gold medal? It's not like, oh yeah, we think we're going to do pretty well. I mean, you have someone that had dominated the sport for so many years, and then it's like, oh yeah, now he got silver last time around, so clearly. And he could have won that. So, I mean, what was that like?
That was absolutely pressure filled every moment for sure. For me, I know like Mick handles the pressure way better than I do. I can tell you that for sure. I was, it's like his legacy is for sure, no matter how we frame it, anything less than a win would have been a failure in Korea. And, I was very confident for him. That's for sure. I was very confident. It was really cool that night. Like, I really believed that he was going to win. But at the same time, I was like, there's no words to describe the pressure. That's for sure. And but at the same time, I love it. I don't want to go through every day like that. But I sure cherish that experience and those memories. But yeah, the boys, the nice thing is, and I'm sure probably, Troy, and you could speak to it as well. But, when you get to go to the Olympic Games with your teammates, good buddies, I think that helps a lot for those boys. Mick and Phil and Mark, those guys grew up skiing together. It was their second Olympic Games all together. And that sure goes a long ways. I think they really supported each other well, and they had a lot of fun. They had probably a lot more fun after the event, but they had a lot of fun there. So I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, no, definitely being there with the teammates makes it a huge difference. So it'll be cool. It'll be actually really cool for this men's team. Like Cole and Nick skiing same situations since they're really little together, and then Brad being there too is kind of like the guy they've probably looked up to since they were like 6 years old. So that's a really interesting and cool dynamic. And with Brad having gone to 2, really knows the landscape, and those guys, it's their first one, but they've got somebody who they really trust and they've always looked up to kind of guide them through that. So that's a huge asset for that men's team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, definitely a big help for sure.
I didn't mean to cut Lars off on his final thoughts, so No, we got the schedule lined up. Go for it there, buddy.
Final thoughts. You know, fortunately, I've been thinking a lot about these Olympics, and my first thought isn't COVID. You know, one of my closest friends is on the U.S. border cross team, and he's going to the Olympics. And you know, we've
Can
talked
we just
a lot
call him
about
what he
it
is?
within family and
Your brother-in-law. Come on, let's just call it like it is.
best man at my wedding, future brother-in-law.
Let's just call a spade a spade.
Mick Deardorff is his name. But you know, like talking with him and talking with family, we've been talking a lot about, you know, the Olympics and moving forward to that, and talking about mogul skiing, and there hasn't been a lot of COVID talk, and I think that's so refreshing, and I think, you know, the Olympic Games as a whole can kind of bring that out, and it's, you know, bringing all the nations together, and it's, you know, it's such a special event for so many people, and it's such a special event for the five of us on this podcast, and it's so fun, and I think it's almost, you know, relieving to kind of talk about, you know, these events and talk about the athletes and going into these experiences, and not necessarily thinking about COVID and, you know, dealing with all the restrictions that they're actually going to have to deal with over there. I think is really going to suck. You know, it's not going to be that normal, you know, Olympic experience that they normally have. But, you know, in the end of the day, they're all Olympians, and they'll be Olympians for life. And I think that conversation, you know, trumps COVID and any other negative thought out there. So, you know, Olympics are great, and I think it brings the best out of people, and I'm excited to see what these games have to offer. Final thought.
Absolutely. Mr. Murphy?
I mean, really nice thoughts there, Lars. I'm just, I think it'll be really cool for me, because it'll be, you know, like went to the last one, watched some of the summer games, and it's definitely like much more nostalgic when you look back on it. And I think with the winter games, it'll be even more so that way. So, I think like now I'm a little bit more like outside of the sport, and you know, in like a day job and working in an office and all this stuff. So this will be a really good way to like really feel those emotions again and get back into it and feel like you're there. And so that's really, I'm just really looking forward to that, and really looking forward to watching all the athletes, but some former friends, you know, some former international friends, seeing how they do. And then also I feel like there's some promise out of this US team. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do. And I really am hoping that we can bring a medal home this time. So those are my parting words.
Mr. Zemba?
No, I think I mean, it's just good to, like, to touch a little bit with what Lars was saying, like what's going on in the world the past 2 years, or my fiance likes to call it, it's March like 693rd, because I think like COVID started on March 14th, and every day since then has felt like the same day. So we're on March 693rd, I think, if you ask her, to be talking about that the Olympics are going to happen. Like, it's good to get those feelings and mojos and excitement going. But I think it's going to be a crapshoot, and like it's going to be an Olympics like there hasn't had, like we've never had, with in terms of the restrictions. And we talk about a little bit of kind of the Olympic experience, and you get to go to this and this and this, but maybe it being more locked down in an experience, you never know what's going to happen. We talk about not having the big crowds and not having the distractions of going and checking out this event or going to this, like being kind of more in a bubble, kind of more like we're all used to. You show up, you go out, you train, you compete, and you go back to the hotel room. Like, who knows who's going to kind of step up and rise to the occasion with that normalcy in terms of what we're used to, but what's unnormal in terms of what goes on with the games and the hecticness of that. So it should be interesting, and look forward to any surprises, hopefully non-health or COVID related, that may happen.
Mr. Kober?
Yeah, not to add too much to that, but for sure, I'm excited. I wish I was going. I'm gonna miss not being there. The one thing I know for sure is there's going to be stuff's going to happen that there's no way we are anticipating right now or could possibly anticipate. So I look forward, like Bryan just said, I look forward to seeing what kind of curveballs are going to be thrown at these guys. for sure there's going to be something in China, whether it's COVID related or otherwise. I think there's going to be one or two surprises, both maybe in the results, but just in how everything unfolds. And like I say, I wish I was going to be there, but it's going to be nice to be watching it all on my TV, sitting on my couch downstairs in my own basement here for once. That'll be a little bit of a different experience. And just thanks for having me on, guys. This has been super fun. Thanks for indulging the grumpy old Canadian coach here. It's been really fun. I love to talk shop, love to talk mogul skiing. It's good to see you guys. And thanks, Bobby, for the invite. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This has been a ton of fun, and thank you guys for taking the time. Especially, we've been chatting for a lot about not only the Olympics, but World Cup season and everything else. And I think either way, it's the reason I really got into it. Was watching Johnny Mosley in 1998, running around on my couch with American flags, like, oh my God, he did it. So I mean, just from that aspect, it brought me into this sport and to be here chatting with you guys. And I can't wait to watch. The Summer Olympics is okay. I pay attention like a little bit, but the Winter Olympics I try to get in as much as possible. And I'm sure all you guys have multiple friends, not just in mogul skiing, but so many different disciplines. I mean, our roommate, who we refer to as our son, Jasper Good, Jeff Good's son, competing in Nordic combined. I mean, I'll hope, and I'm expecting a gold medal out of him, or at least being on the podium or something. It's his second Olympics, but no, it'll be so much fun to just support all those different athletes and everything else. And no matter what it'll bring with COVID and those challenges, and just can't wait to support all the athletes, because all you here with me are former athletes, and the blood, sweat, and tears over the years to put in for an unknown. And most of us are just sitting here talking about it. Some get to participate, most do not. So for them, the ones that are there, and wish everyone the best of luck, and can't wait to talk to you guys after the Olympics to talk about all the surprises and all the picks that we got wrong. And can't wait to do this again soon. So thanks a lot, everybody, for listening in, and really appreciate it. All right, bye, guys. Yep.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Bob.